And this is the Nonprofit Corner podcast with your host, Dr. Victoria Boyd. And welcome to the Nonprofit Corner podcast. And this is your host, Dr. Victoria Boyd. And I'm extremely excited to welcome my guest today, Sarah Olivieri. Is that right?
Oh, you got it. I'm impressed.
I practiced. But listeners, she's going to have a wealth of information for you because truly she has been involved, immersed, and a part of the nonprofit space for many years. So welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you.
And before we get started, let our listeners know, what is the path that really got you here? You know, we all just didn't wake up where we are, but our experiences really add value to what we do today. So give us some of what you did to get here.
Yeah. Well, one day after college and after I had moved to Japan for a year, I came back and somebody offered me a job organizing a conference for a nonprofit. And I'm organized. I was smart. I'd never done that. So I said, sure. And next thing I know, they asked me to be the director of their programming. So I said, sure. And then in that process, I discovered that their bookkeeper was just terrible. And so I took over the bookkeeping, which my mom had done for the school that I had previously gone to, a small private school. So when I said, I don't understand what's going on here, she's like, you can learn QuickBooks. So I took over the finances. Sure. And you know, when by the time you are managing programs and the money, you are like deep into nonprofit territory, really bad. Skip through the timeline. I ended up starting a nonprofit, being the deputy director of a national nonprofit, being the first executive director of a corporately sponsored foundation. That was very interesting to be on the other side of the giving. And then when the economy crashed in 2008, I leaned on the marketing and web development skills I had developed in the nonprofit space, right? You wear many hats, you do all the things.
Tell me about
secretly fix the toilet, right? I'd do it after everybody left so that nobody knew that I could fix it so that it wouldn't become my job. Right? So I built a marketing company. At the time, it wasn't really digital marketing yet. It was really building websites. I honed in on nonprofits. And through that work, as my company got bigger, I realized that most nonprofits couldn't take advantage of great marketing because they didn't run well. They didn't run consistently well. And to take advantage of great marketing, you have to run consistently and consistently quickly.
You are speaking my language.
Right?
The whole training series I do is about marketing and your website. You're really touching into a lot of things that
you got to do all the things.
Yeah.
So a client in DC asked if I would come down and reorganize their team. They were a 125-year-old nonprofit that had gone back into startup mode, essentially. And I was like, oh my God, that sounds like so much fun, which isn't everybody's idea of fun, but to me, it is. I'm like, yes, I want to organize your teams and redesign your programming. So after I did that, I was like, this is where my real passion is. And I start pivoting my business so that I could really focus on helping nonprofits run better. And that led me to create the impact method, which is like an operating framework for nonprofits to use to run better. And so now I teach people that framework and I do coaching and training, mostly with nonprofit leaders to help them do exactly that, run better and scale up their impact and their joy and have more time in their day and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And the name of your company is PivotGround. And that's really what you do. You help organizations look at what they're doing and understand, because change is hard for organizations. We have to admit that. Change is hard, and leadership sometimes stops that because many leaderships or formats aren't adaptable.
That's right.
So just putting pivot into it really touches on all of those areas: leader adaptability, changing trends and times, the digital age and how they need to take advantage of that, the changes that websites have gone through, and all of the tools and systems that are available to them. Because I often tell them, don't ever put in your language, well, we've always done it that way.
That's right. I call that Walt syndrome. We've always done it that way syndrome.
But it's the means of really closing down your organization. If that's your philosophy, we've always done it that way, then you'll never grow. And
can we dive into that for a moment? Because I think what's behind that we've always done it that way mentality is when you get focused so much on the doing, you're just like tasks, you get into ruts of like, well, these tasks work this way. And the mindset shift, the paradigm shift that I love to teach nonprofits is to focus on outcomes. Focus on the result that you don't have direct control over. Like you can't force somebody to give you $300,000, but you sure can do a bunch of activities to try to get $300,000. And if you're focused on that outcome, you're never going to be thinking, well, we've always done it that way, because it's just, that doesn't even fit into how you've done it in the past doesn't fit into the equation of what you're trying to get in the future. And I think that is one of the most important paradigm shifts leaders and staff can make to build organizations that are robust and durable.
Absolutely. And it generally comes from those boards that have been around for a long time, or from a founder who really, yes, it's your baby and you laid the groundwork initially, but things change. And, that's why I guess I love your name, PivotGround. This is this is the strategy, and these are the methods that will help you have a innovation. I like to use the word innovation, especially when you're talking about strategic planning.
Yes.
Because I don't start my strategic planning when I'm helping organizations with that initial list your values and all of that stuff. I start with, okay, let's have an innovation think tank. What are some of the goals and out of the box ideas that might evolve from looking at your mission with that as the compass? What's wild and crazy thing?
Yeah.
I don't always use wild and crazy.
Touches me in a very special spot, because my kind of personal mission with my business is to make the nonprofit industry the industry among all businesses that's looked to as the best at innovation. And we're so far from that right now. We think of like Google and companies like that. But nonprofits to me are solving the world's most complex, unsolved problems. They have to be the best at innovation. And if we're going to be great at innovation, we have to let go of this scarcity mentality and the anti-risk mentality that causes us to just do nothing at all and stay stuck in the sand. We have to be taking risks.
You're
we need not just enough money.
Absolutely.
We need tons of money to be innovating, right?
Yeah.
And we need
well, I'd like to throw out the whole term nonprofit. Just you're a for-purpose business.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
And you should think, that's how the term of our foundation, the Philanthropreneur Foundation, philanthropy and entrepreneurship, because I was teaching at UNLV and I kept hearing myself over and over and over again, keep saying, even though you're in philanthropy, you have to think like an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And you have to do some of those exact same strategies, put in place those same systems, and really think about revenue streams,
Yes.
So, and all of that is like phenomenal. Okay. So I'm reading your bio here, and I always tell myself I shouldn't do that because, but I love the way fundamentally you look at things differently, and it's woven all through what you've said here.
Yeah.
But give us a little peek into what your method is, the method that you created.
Yeah. So in the impact method, it combines strategic planning with operations, let's say. And I like to think of it, and there are three components that are all merged together, or three concepts. And the three concepts are that you have to know where you're going. That's the strategic plan part.
Number one.
But my leveled up version is not just like, I think a lot of traditional strategic plans just told you the destination. And I want strategic plans to be the destination, the turn-by-turn directions, right? The roadmap and the turn-by-turn directions, right? I want it all. I want exactly how I'm going.
You want GPS with the voice
driveway
on.
That's right. And I want rerouting instructions and everything when there's a traffic jam. We're in the modern age, right? Don't just tell me, oh, we're going to Canada and, you figure out how to get there. So that's the where we're going piece. We need to have a process for continuous improvement. This, you already said, like, change is hard, but one of the ways to make change less hard is to get used to it. Make it a practice that you're keeping up with changes in the world. And when there are no changes in the world, you impose your own changes, because when people can get comfortable with change, and when people are comfortable with change, then when a big change comes that they don't have control over, they're ready to go. They're not like, oh God, change is so scary. They're like, we deal with change all the time. I got this.
Yeah. One of my mentors dealt with the Kaizen method.
Yes.
And you mentioned you went to Japan, and all of that is from, and it's the whole theory of continuous improvement. And of course, right now I'm drawing a blank on what's the name of that theory, but it was created by Edward Deming, and there's 14 points of it. Yeah, it's a shame I can't remember, but I will put it in the notes though for the podcast.
So, and the Deming Institute is still around, and I certainly studied a bunch of that work. There's a few versions of it. I encourage
Total
people
quality
to go
management,
check it out.
TQM. There it is.
Yep. And so there's some of that definitely baked in, and that's partly because of my belief, like yours, in innovation. Right? We can't be innovating if we're not constantly improving what we're doing and how we're acting. And I just think in our modern world where change happens so fast, it's also a requirement because of that. And the third piece is capacity. You have to, one day somebody called me up and they said, well, we spent 3 years creating our strategic plan, and now I just need to raise $80,000 in order to start the plan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. That was my response. I bit my tongue on the call, but I'm like, yeah, so a plan that starts with that doesn't start where you are today is not a very good plan. And we have to have the ability to have great capacity in our organizations. And to me, some of that visioning stuff that we do is part of capacity in my mind in traditional strategic planning. When we think about our vision of the future, when we think about our core values or beliefs, right? And what our mission.
I'm laughing because our mission is building nonprofit capacity through education, awareness, and resources. We're just so in sync here.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you have capacity, when you have the ability to improve, and when you're crystal clear on where you're going,
absolutely, you
start to get results. And with capacity comes, when you combine capacity with direction, that strategic plan, capacity. Did I say capacity? Capacity. Maybe there's a new word there. When you combine capacity with strategic planning, with that strategic destination, that's when you get momentum. And so many nonprofits don't have momentum. And
because people don't understand all of those elements. Where are we going? Why do we need to go there? And how do we get there? You create that roadmap with the voiceover directions.
That's right. And that process of improvement, I like to think of it as the rerouting, right? Yes. So like when there's a roadblock, your process of improvement helps you reroute, right? Like, oh, that didn't work. Or like, oh, the road isn't finished up there. And so often in nonprofits, like where the map analogy kind of falls apart or maybe works is we need to go off road, right? We're solving problems that some of us are solving problems that haven't been solved before, which means we're like explorers. There is no map. We have to kind of make our map as we go. We need to I live near the Hudson River and I'm a sailor. So I think of Henry Hudson, who came up the Hudson River in a big ship called the Half Moon, but he had a little boat, like a little rowboat, who were out in front of him checking the depth of the water the whole
pilot
way.
boats, they call them now.
Exactly. And we need that in our nonprofits. They're little experiments, right? That we put out there to see how it's going, to see
the assessment portion that so many of them just don't do. Just,
That's right.
You use your data to make informed decisions.
Yes.
And if you're not assessing and doing and using the data, you're basically just stepping out blindly.
Yeah, you're kind of going blind. And at the same time, I see nonprofits like going all in on a new program. I'm like, whoa, pull it back, scale it down, make a little minimum viable product version and test it and see if it works, right? You test it, get the data, see if it works. Don't just like go all in. There's a great quote. I'm going to blank on his name right now. He wrote Good to Great, which I don't like so much, but Great by Choice is where this quote is from. Jim Collins. It's Jim Collins.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
He says, fire bullets, then cannons. It's easy to remember, meaning you send you make little tests and like you fire your bullets, and then where you see your bullets working, then you pull out the cannons and you're all in that direction. But you don't go all in until you get some traction.
Till you know what you're doing. Okay, we're going to come back with the question you have, why your board should stop approving your budget. So we are going to be back with the Nonprofit Corner podcast in just one moment. Ad grants, websites, strategies. Every second Wednesday, find training at nonprofitcorner.org. Okay, we are back with the Nonprofit Corner podcast and your host, Dr. Victoria Boyd, and our special guest, Sarah Olivieri. Yeah. I'll make sure I spell it right. Okay, we've had a great conversation about direction, assessment. We've always done it that way. But one of the questions that I think always comes up, and almost all boards have to do this, and that's approve budgets. And I'll just say a lot of them. First of all, the people sitting on the board have no clue how to read a financial statement. I'm just going to put it out there. And I'm making a blanket statement again. Many times that's why they want to put an accountant or a CPA on their board to take that responsibility off their plate.
Yeah.
So why should boards not approve budgets?
I have a whole bunch of reasons, and you just gave one. The board often can't even read the financial statements. Although I encourage all board members to learn how to read.
Absolutely.
It's really important that you're monitoring what's going on. But reason number 2 is that even those board members who can read financial statements, you need to be in the day-to-day running of the business, running of the nonprofit. And I like to kind of throw that business word in there to remind people it's a business.
Absolutely.
In order to know if the decisions, right? A budget is a financial plan.
Yes.
And so in order to know if the decisions that are in that plan make sense as tactics, you have to be in the day-to-day. So like, I know a fantastic nonprofit CPA. She is on the board of nonprofits. Even as a nonprofit CPA, she agrees she doesn't know if the decisions are right. Just as a board member, you have to be in the day-to-day leadership to know if they're right. So why would we have a group of people who don't really have a way of assessing whether or not those decisions make sense? Deciding the budget. So that's reason number 2, right?
Yeah.
So they're not really the best informed people. And then one of the most important ones, number 3, is the budget does represent financial decisions. And in reality, I mean, I've sat on boards. I've been an executive director.
We've been there.
We've been there. When you approve a budget, what are you approving? Like, think about, what did you actually approve? Did you approve the bottom number? Did you approve an amount in each category?
Yeah.
Within a variance? What if the budget you were presented included a line that said postage? Are you actually approving a limit on the amount the organization, like, are you making decisions on how much to spend on postage or not? Do you even know exactly what you approved when you said, we approved this budget?
And on the flip side, the impact it will have if you make a decision that is detrimental.
That's right. And you probably won't even know it. So while I encourage all boards to, and let me just step back and say there's another reason too.
Okay.
In my experience as a consultant as well, looking at, it's great to have been in the nonprofit, feel the feelings, but let me tell you, compared to like the 5 nonprofits I was involved with running, the 40-something nonprofits I've intensely, closely coached and trained, I've learned way more than just those 5.
Absolutely.
Right. And in looking at those, what I found is whether or not a budget got approved was a product of how good a presenter, the executive director or the CFO was when they presented the budget. Are they a good salesperson, right? Do they make a good case? And the conversations that I would have with clients who were preparing budgets for their board was all around, will my board approve this? Will my board approve this? Will my board approve this? The conversation I want them to have is, does spending money this way make sense? Yep. Will we get the most bang for our buck? Will it help us make our mission?
Yeah, educate them first.
Absolutely. Exactly. So, and I want executive directors to be, and CFOs to be thinking about achieving their missions and bringing in more money. I don't want them to be thinking about whether or not their board will approve it, because that doesn't help the organization move forward, right? That's like wasted energy going out the side. So, that is another reason why what I have seen is my clients who do not have their boards approve their budgets make better financial plans. Okay. And surprisingly, their boards get more engaged in the conversation.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, because I'm on the very front end of a lot of nonprofits, I help them file, and they put it in their bylaws that the board has to approve a budget.
Yeah.
Which that should be a part of policies and procedures and stuff. It's not a part of governance so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and again, I see nonprofit leaders, I say executive director, but leadership team, if you're small, your leadership team might be a team of 1, but hopefully you're working together as a team. That's part of running well, right? You don't just be a siloed dictator, right? But assuming that you have a good method for working as a team, you don't need the board stopping you, right? When you have to go to the board for approval for an expense, now you're taking the decision-making out of the hands of the team who are in it day to day, who understand the real consequences and will experience the real consequences, good or bad.
Just because it popped in my head, what do you think about those policies and procedures, sometimes in their bylaws, that states if the purchase is over $1,000, it has to have board approval?
Yeah, no. If you don't trust your executive director or your leadership team to spend money appropriately, then you need to change your executive director. You need to let them go and replace them, right?
Or change the board.
Or change the board, right? But ultimately, yes, you might have a board that is wonky too, but you need to have leadership that you trust. I mean, if you're assuming you're a good board, an effective board, you need to have leadership you trust to make spending decisions. And at the end of the day, who's more qualified to make that spending decision, right? The board who's uninformed and won't experience, like, here's the thing, when boards make bad financial decisions, they don't suffer, right? Maybe they feel a little embarrassed as a board. Probably the community won't know about it. They're not going to lose their paycheck. They're not going to get fired. Probably nobody will ever know. And they'll be like, oh yeah, that kind of sucked, but then they'll move on. When an executive director makes a bad financial decision, their job is on the line, their career is on the line. Often their ability to have staff and resources to support them is on the line.
So much is right. And sometimes that decision is a result of a board decision.
That's right.
That's right. It's that domino. Board made a bad decision. Executive director had too much to overcome it because of that decision. And it evolved into a second issue.
Yep. I'll tell you a real story of a new client of mine who has a very small budget. So I have a group coaching program, and my program was over 10% of her budget, her entire annual budget. And she was thinking of considering. So for many organizations, and it always pays for itself. So I'm confident in that. And I've had other organizations who are in the same position, and we totally grew them so that the program always pays for itself. But it was a big, scary decision. But the executive director was confident that it made sense. Plus, I guarantee that it'll pay for itself. So how can you go wrong, right?
That's right.
But she had to have board approval, and her board, they did approve it in the end, but it took many months. And what happened during those months? My program went up by $4,000.
Wow.
So they are paying $4,000 more, and their operating budget is under $70,000 because their board was slow.
Yeah.
That was unnecessary money. She'll get the same service for $4,000 more because her board was slow, right?
So it's about taking action, being up to date with budgets or whatever, up to date on two fronts. What's happening in the organization, and do you understand the budget and what it means, and the impact that it could have based on a decision that might be made with misinformation.
That's right. That's right.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So you're also a part of the Effective Leaders Success Toolkit giveaway. That's a long name. What are you actually giving away in that?
In that, I am giving away what's normally a paid training, but I'm giving it away on how to staff up your organization. And so many nonprofits, if you say, what's the number one challenge nonprofits face? So many times you think funding right away.
Yeah, they think it's funding. It's not, though.
It's almost never funding.
Yes.
And one of the things it almost always is, for at least from my perspective, is they're understaffed.
Yeah, bandwidth. They don't have the capacity that we're in to do the tasks that need to be done without totally burning somebody out.
That's right. And and your human capacity is like one of the main sources of fuel for your whole nonprofit. In fact, it's how you get the funding. You need the people to get the funding. And so this has been one of the most popular classes that I have taught. And so I'm giving it away. I have a 4-part framework, parts of I won't give it all away here, but there's this nonprofit leadership blueprint that I teach in that class. And if people are watching this after the giveaway, I do teach this class live a few times a year. So
I'll put your website so they can.
We'll give you links so you can find it whenever. But this nonprofit leadership blueprint that I teach so that you can be crystal clear on all the roles and really see where the gaps are. I do this exercise with this tool that basically maps out all the functions of a nonprofit. And I just ask people to put the names of the people who are leading those functions.
Yeah.
And usually once you do that, you see huge gaps.
This also would be a good exercise for a future founder, somebody who's thinking about creating a nonprofit. Mm-hmm. It's a roadmap also of what they will need.
That's right. That's right. I use this. This is one of my Swiss Army knife tools. It's in the impact method as well, because it's, which staff do you need to hire? Yes. How do you maneuver your current staff? Do you have enough leaders versus enough, I call it the heads and the hands, right? The people who are leading versus the people who are doing the tasks, doing the work. Yeah. So many nonprofits aren't just understaffed. They're specially starved at the leadership level. Okay. I was just thinking of a nonprofit I worked with. Their operating budget was small too, under 400,000. And they had one real leader, an executive director, kind of an office assistant person. Mm-hmm. They had 6 programs. The executive director was running 5 of the 6.
Oh,
there was
wow.
a leadership person who could run 1, and 20 or more, 20 in the low 20s of part-time staff running all these programs.
Wow.
You can't manage that many people.
Right.
And lead the programming and do all the fundraising. It's too much work for one true leader.
They needed to learn the delegation and how to empower and grow leaders within that.
That's right. And if you have just, 20 people are 20 people, even if they're part-time.
Yes, they can still be
20
leaders.
whole people.
I call that intentional leadership, where it's not your task to lead so much, but to nurture and grow more leaders in your space.
That's right.
This has been wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm going to make sure I have all of your links and information. Do you have any last words or tips for our listeners?
Oh my God. I mean, you can get so much free, great information online these days, but the hardest thing is to take action and do it. So I just encourage everybody, rather than move on to the next podcast or the next free training, take something you learned today, whether it was from listening to this or something you learned somewhere else, and implement it, and then take a look and see how that worked.
Absolutely.
Move on to the next
I love that concept. Yes, there is a lot of free stuff out there, but you still have to invest in yourself and in the organization, because you don't really value it until you have made an investment. So I think they should invest in your program. They should invest in our membership platform.
Absolutely. You got to have some skin in the game. Even if all you did, the value of investing is so great because it makes you take action. Right.
Yes.
Sometimes
because you mentioned, and just the act of investing is an action step.
That's right.
Okay.
And it will help you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Sarah. I wish you the best. I know I'm going to be talking to you again because you are a wealth of information. Hopefully you can come back on the podcast in the future. And this is your host, Dr. Victoria Boyd of the Nonprofit Corner Podcast. And we will see you next time.